All right, so welcome everybody to the Careers in STEM panel for Computer Science and Technology. Thank you so much for giving us your time today. Really appreciate it. Um, so we'll get going with introductions. I'm going to start with you, Peter, because you're the one I can see first. Can you give us your name, your job title, how long you've been in your current position, what degree or degrees you have, and then a little bit about your personal journey in school and beyond.
Yeah, sure. So, hey everyone, my name's Peter Sharp. My current job title is software engineer, and I work for Black Knight Financial Services. We're like a mortgage data and analytics company. We just got bought by Intercontinental Exchange or ICE Mortgage Technology, so we're kind of in like a transition between the two, but my paycheck still says Black Knight, so that's who I say I work for. I've been working here for like a little under 2 years. Before that, I was working in a DevOps role for a smaller startup for about a year. I have a bachelor's degree in computer science, graduated from Cal State San Marcos, 2021. And a little bit about myself or my journey. I initially was a chemistry major. That's how I met Danica. I was doing research at UCSD in a computational chemistry lab, and kind of pivoted to software engineering and development. And yeah, background, I grew up in San Diego, still live in San Diego. Just bought a house in Vista with my girlfriend and my son. Um, Free time, I enjoy traveling, rock climbing, hanging out, going to the beach and stuff. But I'm very busy working too.
Awesome. And you went to Palomar College to start. So we
Oh
got our
yes, yeah,
community
yeah. I was
college
at Palomar
crowd.
College for a very long time before I finished at Cal State San Marcos. So kind of got my feet wet into a lot of different things before I figured out computer science was for me.
Nothing wrong with that. Yeah, but some of us take the long road. I am one of those. Awesome. Thank you so much, Peter. Joshua, did you want to go next?
Sure. My name's Joshua. My most recent title is Senior UX Researcher at Vanta. Vanta is a cybersecurity startup based here in San Francisco, California. I've been working probably in a UX research role at one organization or another for about 5 years now. I've been working in the cybersecurity space, like I mentioned, but also in financial technology and banking. And before that, I was in developer tools for a little bit and consumer electronics as well. In terms of education, I have a bachelor's of science in cognitive science, specializing in human-computer interaction from UC San Diego, and I'm currently pursuing a master's of science in cybersecurity as a part-time thing at Georgia Tech. Personal journey, mostly like California native, grew up in LA, went to school in San Diego, and now I'm up here in the Bay Area. It's been great. California is an amazing state, so that's really fun. I got into cognitive science actually through computer science, so I was a computer science major first. Like coding, didn't really love coding so much, and was like, oh, I like the human element a bit more. I got interested in some behavioral economics and some psychology, and turns out you can actually combine those things. And that's how I found the cognitive science major and ended up specializing in HCI.
Awesome. I love that. And I love hearing people pivoting in their journey too, because I think a lot of people think you pick a place and then you have to go there, but it's nice to be able to kind of follow whatever path unfolds. So awesome. Thank you, Joshua. Priscilla, did you want to follow up?
Sure. Hello, my name is Pricilla Pichay. I am a senior information security engineer at Cubic Corporation. So I have been in this role for about 7 years now, with the company in total for 11. I started off here as an intern and worked my way all the way up to where I am now. It took me a long while to get there, and I actually was not a technology major at all before I even started this career. I was a nurse for about 5 years beforehand. That was a very interesting journey that, not everybody is really cut out for it. And for me, I think that just as fascinated as I am with the human body, sometimes the other stuff that comes along with it can be a little bit taxing on you as a human being. So I switched careers and ended up here. And 11 years later, I'm still here trying to, kind of keep it plugging along. I'm actually not from San Diego. I'm originally from British Columbia, Canada. And my family moved here, well, to Connecticut way back a long time ago. And when I was 3, that's when I moved to Connecticut. Moved here when I was 27, or about 27. So when I went back to school, I went back to school at Coleman University. That school is no longer open anymore because of low attendance and high costs for a lot of things. So that school doesn't exist anymore, but I am lucky to have gotten a dual bachelor's in network security and computer networks. So don't do a whole lot of coding, but I deal with a lot of security tools, mainly firewalls, IDR, and vulnerability detection. So it's been a long journey, but here I am. Definitely pivoted from another place, and I think that what kind of took me here was the fact that I've always loved computers. When I was a child, I used to kind of tinker with them, and my father would take me to computer shows, and I would get little pieces of computer and make something of it, as a child. So it was always something that I was very interested in, and kind of did a lot of searching and learning on my own before I even went to school for it. So yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I think this is great because I know a lot of people in computer and tech fields that didn't get their initial degree in that area. My brother being one of them, who had an English lit degree, and then kind of was like, "Oh boy, what do I do with this?" So then went to school, did some accreditation for web development. So that there are ways into these fields, even if you're doing like a post-bac or certifications, things like that. So awesome. Thank you so much for sharing, Pricilla. Let's see, Sebastian, am I allowed to call you Sebas on
Yeah, go ahead.
recording?
You're good. Hi, so my name is Sebastian Aviles. Funny enough, I actually also work at Cubic. So I'm a project engineer at Cubic. If you don't know what Cubic is, I work for the transportation like kind of sector of Cubic. There's kind of 3 sides of Cubic. And I work for the Omni project, which is what, if you've ever been to New York and rode the subway, that's pretty much everything you see and do and interact with is Cubic product. So I've been there for about almost 3 years now, and it's a lot of fun. You get to work with the customer. We have really great customers. I get to travel for work, so I've been to New York a few times in the last year already. And as far as my degree, I have a bachelor's in computer science, and I actually started at Southwestern College, where I met Danica in a chemistry class. It's actually also where I met my wife, funny enough. So we met in chemistry, and I actually didn't need to take that class because it turns out in my associate degree transfer, it was like not even needed. So funny how that works out. Yeah, and I transferred to state and finished up within 2 years there, and just like many of other people, applied to hundreds of companies and landed somewhere. A little bit about myself. So kind of got into like computer science because of gaming. I grew up playing console games, computer games. Early on, probably like when I was 13 or 14, I did start building computers, and me and my friends would trade like RAM and different things, and we started playing World of Warcraft when we were kids in like middle school. And so as an adult, I didn't go back to school till later, because I didn't have a lot of like motivation to, I guess. But I'm also first generation, so it was a lot harder, and I didn't have a lot of support. So I was, got myself through school by myself, and now I'm here. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Thanks.
Awesome. Heck yeah. Thank you for sharing. And Hobson.
Yeah, Hobson Lane, with he, him are my pronouns. I'm CTO at Tangible AI. Obviously, we build AI systems. Before that, I got, of course, a bachelor's in English Lit and in physics as well, and taught high school for a couple of years, and then transitioned to aerospace with my master's degree at Georgia Tech in robotics, and built a lot of spacecraft robots, like one that walked around along on the outside of the space shuttle, and terrestrial robots, and aerospace industry is full of automation and robotics. And then, but of course, got tired of, even though I was trying to work on only defensive systems, shooting down ballistic missiles, and but unfortunately, the systems I was building ended up being used for things that I didn't approve of. So took a break for 4 years, retrained myself in AI and software development, and got a junior software development role, and worked my way up to where I'm at now. So I co-founded Tangible AI.
Fantastic, wonderful. I love it. You're part of the journey of tangents as well. I love that the English Lit transition into computer science. It's awesome, or computer technology in general. Fantastic. Really, really interesting journeys. Thank you all. So next up, I think you guys kind of touched on this in several of your responses already. But did you know you wanted to work with computers when you started going to school, or did you pivot? And what were the resources that helped you identify the field you wanted to go into? And this can be, initially as you got your degree, or kind of along the path once you started working. So Hobson, I'll just start with you.
Let's see, so I had to train myself in those 4 years to get into computer science, but I had always been into computers, of course. But back in my day, there weren't any really high-level languages, so it was only C on, and assembly on embedded systems. And so ultimately, I really, took to it when I got control of higher level languages. Always enjoyed making machines do what my bidding, as my little brother never would. So it was a lot of fun to get that job to work with a professional team who did it more correctly than I was doing it on my own. And, let's see, what else did you want to know about? What else? Oh, resources. I used Coursera and Udacity, and of course, Kaggle competitions online, and also Springboard. I've been a Springboard mentor ever since they first were founded. So that's a data science. They have a data science and computer science bootcamp.
Can you tell us a little bit about what is Springboard? I'm not familiar with that.
It's a boot camp that provides a job guarantee. So it's real popular with people who don't have a bachelor's degree in computer science, and so or data science, depending on what career path you're going down. And so they have a lot of recruiters and a lot of partnerships with businesses, and they have one-on-one mentors then help people through a 6-month to 9-month program. And as long as you complete the program, they get you a job.
Awesome. Wonderful. Thank you so much. Let's see. Pricilla, did you want to follow up?
Okay, sorry, I had to unmute myself. Okay, I'm sorry, could you just repeat the question again really quick?
No, I'm muted. Sorry.
Okay.
So for those of you who joined us a little bit later, we do have the questions posted in the invite. So if you want to pull them up, it makes it a little easier because it is kind of hard after a few people answer. But yeah, so did you know what you wanted? Did you know that you wanted to work with computers when you started going to school, or did you pivot? And then what were some resources that helped you identify the field or specialization that you wanted to go into?
Okay, so what I had said in the introduction that I did start off as a nursing major, and I did work as a nurse for about 5 years. It took me, I guess, like, I don't know. I'm pretty sure that I knew that I wanted to work in computers after I had decided I wanted to make a career change. And I really just kind of thought about what it was that I find myself to be I don't know, something that brings me joy, because I do enjoy fixing things. And then finally, once I get it, it's like you get this kind of rush of adrenaline. And I think I had been explaining that to one of my coworkers, and he's like, well, that's because you're an engineer. Like, okay, well, I mean, it makes sense. So a lot of things that kind of contributed to that, because I was always the family IT tech person to go to whenever they needed help, or just a lot of things that I knew that I wanted to make sure that I liked what I was doing before I decided to spend another, couple $10,000 for another degree. So I kind of just spoke to people that were already in the field as well. My brother was a network engineer for a little while, and he always used to talk to me about things like that. And I used a lot of resources of like actual personal friends and family, just to make sure that I was going into a field that I really loved. And then I just did some more research online and noticed that at the time when I was going to school, cybersecurity had 11% women in the field. I think now that's grown to about 25%. But I wanted to kind of change that and kind of make my own way through this, because I know that cybersecurity was such an emerging field, and it was a buzzword everywhere you went. And now that's all that we hear about now. So it was just something that I really felt like speaking to people firsthand was a huge factor in me considering where I wanted to go.
Awesome. So do you, I'm sorry, I missed a little chunk of that there. Did you have family, or was this mostly friends that you were talking to that were in those fields or areas?
So my brother was my biggest influence. He was a network engineer. So I spoke with him about it. My father was an electrical engineer and he also did some mechanical engineering as well. And he kind of, always encouraged that when I was growing up. But I think at that time, as with a lot of Filipino families, they kind of force you to going into nursing like right away. That's like as soon as a girl is born, they're like, nurse, here you go. And, then you just kind of follow through that. And me following my dreams, my dad kind of, he helped kind of foster that when I was trying to pick another career too. So yeah, I would say family, but I do have some friends that also work in the field.
Nice. That's awesome. Thank you so much. Joshua?
Yeah, so thinking about like when I first started going to school and like even thinking about colleges, I was always interested in technology as a whole. I think one of my thought process was between aerospace engineering, because obviously who doesn't like planes? They're cool and they shouldn't actually fly, but somehow they do. And computers, because like there's a lot of cool technology things happening there. So I ended up going with a computer science path. And I was doing that for a few years. I really enjoyed it. And I basically just got to a place where I was like, hey, is this actually something that I want to personally be doing, right? Like sitting around just coding all day. And I came to the realization that for me, I didn't love, coding that much, or like the problems around that as much as some of the other aspects. And around that same time, I actually got very interested in psychology and behavioral economics. So some of the resources that really influenced me there were actually these things that we used to bring, and they're, you know, they're kind of I don't know, paper color like, they're called books. Daniel Kahneman's Thinking Fast and Slow and Predictably Irrational really changed a lot of things for me. A Drunkard's Walk by Leonard Mlodinow. I started reading that and I was like, this is the coolest thing ever. Then I was like, oh, should I actually just make a pivot into, you know, psychology or behavioral economics? And I was like, I don't know how much I want to be a therapist. Not that that's the only path that you have. But then behavioral economics is a little too niche for me. And thankfully, at that time, I guess resources on campus at UCSD was some of the like materials just around cognitive science, and being able to take the like intro class there, where they were like, oh, you actually like psychology? We study both human and artificial intelligence systems. So everything from non-human primates to obviously humans to artificial intelligence systems. So you get to actually put together everything from behavioral economics, sociology, neuroscience, computer science, and we get to like understand the world. From there, I then went into that specialization of human computer interaction, because I was like, oh, this is again all of the cool things that I really personally enjoy. And I'm able to sit in this very unique place in this intersection between technology and humans, which I think is the most fascinating thing ever. Because I mean, you know, even in this room of great panelists who are all working in technology, I'm sure there are many times we all struggle with technology on a daily basis, right? And we're, you know, we're the group that's supposed to be making it and like understanding it, right? And then if you think about the average people who, you know, don't have this background, you're thinking about those experiences. That's where I really got into, hey, like this is actually really important, like designing things and making things built and intending for them to be built for the people that's actually using them is ways that you can actually like make impactful changes. And you can extend that obviously into other fields as well, whether that's like urban planning, thinking about the requirements of things and the impact that that would have on people. Especially, I'm sure, you know, at some point we're going to start talking about AI, generative AI, and other things like that. But that's what's influenced me so far in part of my journey, I guess.
That is so cool, first of all. Second of all, thank you so much for book dropping, because I'm a huge fan of book dropping. On the topic of user design, to piggyback on what Pricilla was saying about women in tech, great book called Invisible Women, all about the data gaps pertaining to women in a variety of areas. But one of the areas that I found really fascinating is user design. So product design, so like the size of iPhones, for example, are not calibrated for the size of the average woman's hand. A lot of these kinds of things where when you think about product design, that area is it's fascinating area. Anyways, thank you for book dropping. I love that. Peter, did you want to follow up?
Yeah, sure. As I mentioned earlier, I was not originally going to school for computer science. I initially started going to Palomar College, kind of with the idea that I wanted to do something in biology. I switched to chemistry like after my first semester taking bio classes and realizing that I wasn't interested in that. And then, yeah, I was doing chemistry for a few years. I met you, Danica, at Palomar College. You were, great enough to introduce me to one of your former professors at UCSD, Francesco Paisani. He runs the Paisani Lab, which is a computational chemistry lab focused on like atmospheric chemistry, PChem stuff. So I started doing undergraduate research there with those guys when I was still going to Palomar as a chemistry major. I think I was there for probably about a year or a year and a half, and I was working on a research paper with a postgrad student that I actually were able to publish, which was pretty exciting. But during that whole course of that project that I was working on, I kind of realized what really like the parts that I enjoyed or what kind of sparked my interest was the development that we were doing. So writing scripts and all the things that we were doing, the distributed programming that was kind of new at that time for at least that department to be breaking into. And we were working with the San Diego Supercomputer Center. So there was a lot of kind of collaborative effort, not just like chemists and physicists. There was a lot of like development that was being done, and a lot of computer science people were kind of building these systems out that then the scientists were using for experimentation. And when we got to the end of that project, that was when we had to do all of our kind of science stuff and write the paper and do all the analysis. And it was, it was an experience. And I think it was really good that I got to experience it as an undergrad, because I realized right then and there, like, this is not what I'm interested in. These people are super passionate. They're like post-grad. They've been doing this for 8+ years. And it's like, I saw how passion-driven research was. And it's really niche, like you get so specialized into an area, and then a lot of the time these people, when they go out into the job field, they're lucky if they get a job that matches their specialization. A lot of the time people are falling back to software development because they have soft skills in that, or they're lucky enough to find jobs at like science companies doing computational stuff. But yeah, luckily I was able to kind of experience that as an undergraduate before I even like switched to a university. So yeah, I switched to computer science, and then shortly after I went to Cal State San Marcos. And I kind of finished up my research with those guys, and then just was working like a after school STEM job at Cal State, because I was really trying to just dig into my major and get done as soon as I could, because I was already like 5 years in the can at Palomar, and I was just ready to graduate at that point. But biggest resources, like starting with you, I would say definitely is professors, because you were like the first one that opened that door for me to get into computational chemistry. I kind of like kept that ball rolling, where I tried to form like really good relationships with my professors, and that was how I landed my first job out of college, was through a recommendation of one of my professors. And that's actually how I landed the job I have now. My old professor is like the director of the department I'm under. So I'd say like networking, talking to your professors, showing up to office hours, like just showing a genuine interest in the things that they do can really help you in your career. And it's even like just having those people added to you on LinkedIn, like years later, they post that they're looking for a job and they remember you from class. It's already like a foot in the door, which, as everyone knows, it's super competitive out there, and there's a ton of people with our degree that are kind of fighting for the entry-level jobs. So every little thing helps.
Awesome, thank you. And then those professors will rope you into doing career panels.
Yeah, no, yeah, I was like, it wasn't even a question. I'm like, man, everything she's done for me, like, it's gonna be so hard that I can't say no.
Well, I appreciate you. You've done your service
Permanent
now.
panelist or whatever you need. Yeah.
Thank you, Peter. Sebas, I'm sorry, I can't call you Sebastian. I'll
Yeah,
try
you're good.
next
Cool.
time.
Yeah. So I would say definitely to some extent, as I mentioned in the introduction, being a gamer growing up playing on computers, I think that like for sure led me into what I wanted to do for a bachelor's. As far as like, I would say once I got into school, I really didn't sway. I think I was like pretty dead set, like this is it. So I think I got lucky in that sense. But I had a ton of help and resources as far as campus stuff goes. Like if you don't know what MESA is, I think MESA is offered at pretty much most community colleges, also at San Diego State, where I graduated from. And being a part of MESA was huge because, as someone else mentioned, networking, first of all, you get exposed to a lot of people in the industry. And one of the cool things that MESA does is they have a lot of workshops, and they have a thing where they do, it's called like Shadow Day. So I got to be a part of Shadow Day, and I got to go to, it used to be called War, now it's called NIWIC. So I got to go to NIWIC, and I spent the day there touring labs and meeting different PIs, which are like the principal investigators. And so that actually helped me get an internship that was unfortunately cut short because of COVID. So it got canceled, but they kind of tried to remedy it with like an online thing they did at the end of the year, which was only like 2 weeks long. So it wasn't quite the same experience, but I still got to kind of do something cool. It was like a Python project. So for me, that was like one of the biggest resources was being in Mesa, and then at San Diego State, being in Mesa helped a lot because you have like mentors you can be a part of, you can get help from. All the staff that's a part of Mesa is super, super helpful and always willing to help with anything you need, whether it's like a letter recommendation, a referral, anything, you name it, like you will get help. I also got a scholarship through Mesa. It wasn't super big, but I mean, it helped, right? Anything helped at that point. I would say, as far as my current position, I didn't expect to be a project engineer. I thought when I was getting a computer science degree that I was like, oh yeah, for sure, I'm going to do something programming related. But I got into Cubic and I started in the test engineering, which I got to like work with, kind of doing some like Python stuff and scripting. But ultimately, you know, that foundation of learning from computer science has helped me immensely in my position because it's important to understand the fundamentals and knowing that. And so definitely for me, school was my biggest resource. Absolutely. Yeah. Thanks.
Awesome. And just wanted to follow up on that. So the Mesa program, as opposed to Mesa College, which is where I work, is mathematics, engineering, and science achievement. And those programs, like Sebastian was saying, are in almost every school. So we're kind of late in the game. Ours just started, just opened. But yeah, they are wonderful programs. You have to qualify. I think there are income, other things around the qualifications, but tremendous resource. And they usually have tutoring that's open to anybody. So that's another resource available there. Awesome. Thank you. All right. By the way, there's more panelists than I've ever had before. So if I accidentally miss one of you on a question, feel free to just be like, hey, I think I got everyone though. Okay, so you guys all work in such different fields. If you can just give us kind of a breakdown of a typical workday. I appreciate that there's probably a lot of variation in that. So if you want to talk about that as well, please. So Seabass, we'll start with you.
Sure. So for me, like, I guess to be pretty candid with it, like pretty much my day starts, I have, but both the projects I work on are East Coast projects. So being in West Coast time zone means I have to be up early for, you know, customer meetings, stuff like that, correspondence. So my day usually starts pretty early. Probably I'll be on a call by 6 sometimes. Um, I usually will like spend the first couple hours of my day like going through my email and hammering out like what do I need to do for the day. Basically, it's always like prep for the day. Because there's always so much work. You have to be organized. I would say from there, you know, I to some extent I get the luxury of every day is kind of different. I don't think I've had 2 similar days since I've started working at Cubic. In my field, if you don't know kind of what like a project engineer, so specifically for me, I work with like the back end. I do like work with software and delivering software and stuff like that and configuring. And so for me, a lot of it working with the project, we have multiple things going on, like in what we call lower environments, like our test environments that I'm a part of, and as well as a live system. So heavily involved in what we call like incident management. So we have a live system, we have software out in the field that's, you know, millions of people, we get about 4 million taps per day in Omni. It's pretty crazy. So every day I'll have a backload of production things going on and then deliverables that are up and coming, right? So for me, yeah, the pretty much it's chaos anywhere from like the last half of my day. It's just working off a priority list. I do a lot of kind of debugging and triage. I spend a lot of time in a database looking at stuff, looking at APIs, looking at documentation, reading specs. So it's pretty involved and pretty involved with the customer as well. So it's like half and half. I would say half my day is usually customer involved. The other half is like what I can spare to everything else that needs to get done. But it's pretty good. I mean, at Cubic, they offer a 980 schedule, so I have every other Friday, but I have longer days. So you get used to it. And yeah, there's pretty much, I don't know.
So do you generally work in the office or are you remote?
I do. So I'm on site typically 2 to 3 days a week. Most of my team is based in New York, so when I'm on site, it's really just to kind of go in, be in the lab sometimes. We do have San Diego headquarters for Cubic is like the main headquarters where we have all of the projects and their labs, their test labs, with some exceptions. And if you don't know like how big Cubic is, it's global. So Cubic does the transit systems for like London. I think they have Perth. I believe that's Australia. We just got like New Zealand. We have, New Jersey, the PATH train into Omni, New York, Chicago, Ventra. List goes on, Minneapolis. We used to do San Diego, but we didn't get that bid. Yeah, pretty busy day. So it could really vary. Some weeks I won't touch documentation. Some weeks I'll be like, my whole week is like documentation or, just that kind of stuff. So.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thanks.
So a little bit of everything and a nice, moderate amount of flexibility in terms of being able to work from home a little bit.
Yes, definitely.
Awesome. Perfect. Let's see, Joshua.
Sure, yeah. So similarly, I think my day-to-day looks a little different every day, which I really enjoy about my job. It ranges from everything to what my favorite part is when I actually get to talk to users of our product or whatever thing we're interested in researching. It's usually a conversation where I reach out to them and say, hey, I'm just interested in learning about how you do X, Y, and Z. Can you tell me more about how you're doing that? And what I do is as a researcher, right? I collect that data and bring that back to the organization. And my main role at the organization is to really be a catalyst to allow for the user to have a seat at the table. And what that actually means is many times when you're in a business, a lot of decisions are being made, obviously with business goals in mind, right? You're likely working for a for-profit company, at least I have in the past. And yeah, when that happens, you're focused on making the most profit, which is not necessarily a bad thing. But the most important thing to remember is that your customers are really important. And the decisions that you're making, the things that you're thinking about, it's very important to really know and understand your customers. And that's part of my job, is to bring that customer and their feedback over to the table so that when we're making decisions, right, we're able to understand these are their problems, here are the opportunities, here's where hopefully some of these things intersect, and we're able to both solve customer problems, user problems, but at the same time also help the business with their business goals of any metrics that they're looking to move forward, right? So I touched on that in terms of like the business side of things, and on that side, I do everything from writing some queries in SQL to try to pull up data on how people are using current tools that we might have in production, right, where we have real users. I might also just be in meetings where I'm helping evangelize a lot of the research that we've done and running workshops and things of that nature to help really distill what opportunities that we're seeing and what really needs to be part of MVPs, like minimum viable products, as you're thinking about 0 to 1 products. So 0 to 1 are products that obviously just don't exist when you're starting out, and then to 1 releasing that product, hopefully, right? So that might be, again, like helping tag things from research that I've done or other people have done, to just distilling that information in a way that's actionable for the organization to make decisions. So like I said, that could be sending out emails, that could be looking at data sets sometimes, that could be just tagging interviews that I've done in the past to say, hey, here's where someone showed us that they had trouble with this part or that part, right? Yeah, that's mostly what I get to do in the day, and collaboration is I think the thing that ties it all together, because in a very interdisciplinary role where you have to work with product managers and product designers and software engineers, it's always good to have a basis to understand the challenges they face and the things they're facing and how we can work together to move that forward and actually build something.
Awesome. And do you also work in an office sometimes, out of an office?
Yeah, organizations I've worked with in the past have all been very remote friendly. I personally like going into an office, so when that option is there, I'm usually there, even though it's like a 45-minute commute or something like that. But definitely not a necessity in any way. There are times when, like I said, you're running workshops or you're doing some planning meetings, and it is very helpful for you to just be in office together. And then you also have that bonding time. You might be getting lunch together, dinner, whatever plans you have after. And that's usually really useful. But outside of that, it's typically use your own best judgment, right? Like if you're doing your best work at home, you should go do that and contribute. If you're doing your best work in the office or somewhere else, then you should go do that as well.
I'm with you, Joshua. I need to be in an office personally, but I respect and appreciate people that can work at home. I'm not
Yeah.
one of awesome. Thank you. Priscilla.
Okay, so just like a lot of us had said previously, a typical workday for me doesn't look the same. Oftentimes when I get in, I spend a good amount of time in the morning to kind of go through emails, messages through our ticketing service. I work for the corporate side of Cubic, which we serve all the business units, transportation and the military services as well. So my customers are actually, Sebastian is my customer in that sense. So I often will be working with a lot of users, just kind of troubleshooting some networking issues that they may have, or going through and trying to make sure that they all have the access to the resources that they need. Most of the time, the resources are in Azure or somewhere else where we would have to, maybe open up a VPN tunnel to allow Cubic to speak to some of these systems that they're building. As on the top of all of that, we are on the security team. We're on call pretty much 24/7. So we have to be ready in the event of any breach. We have to be on our P's and Q's, watching for alerts coming through on email, and kind of discussing with our team to make sure that we're all kind of in alignment for what is in store for the day, because you'll never really know, especially with cybersecurity, because attacks come at any time, and you should never assume that you're safe at any time, because it's not 100%. So we work with an engineering side and an analyst side, so we kind of collaborate where we make sure that all of the IPs that we're opening up to are safe, and that there is no issues with the protocols that are being used. So there's a lot of back and forth between the project side and security engineering, just to make sure that we protect all of our data, because we have lots of contracts that we don't really need the whole world knowing about. Cubic's claim to fame is the Top Gun. The Top Gun movie, that training program is actually owned by Cubic, was developed by Cubic, and so that is one of the things that I mentioned. So like, we don't want any of that stuff to kind of go to foreign adversaries, for example. So a lot of times we're just kind of on alert, or at least just keeping our eyes on the door and keeping the lights on for our users.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Mhm.
All right, Hobson, what you got for us?
Back to the book drop, Algorithms to Live By. It's got great algorithms for your students who are trying to find an apartment, like things like when do you stop looking for an apartment and settle on one, and it's got some really good algorithms for life. and you can apply them at your job. So my daily work back when I was a junior developer would typically consist of going to daily stand-ups. This is where you have a conversation about what's going on the software project you're working on, and the product manager or UX developer will give you ideas about what features are really important right now to be added, and then you go off and work on those, and then you come back the next day and do it all over again. And it's kind of a race and between developers to see who can get done the fastest. And there's often a game called poker that you'll play where you try to estimate how hard something is, and everybody's trying to jostle with how hard something is, and then that gives you the points that you are kind of competing with your fellow developers on to deliver features. This is one of the really fun parts of working on a team in software engineering. That brings me to another thing that's really important when you're on those sorts of teams. It's really important to watch your style, because it's going up and being read by others. It'll be code reviewed by somebody. Typically, you'll do peer code reviews. You'll look at each other's stuff, and if they can't read your stuff because you didn't use any line breaks or whatever, then it can be a real pain on the rest of your team. So you got to kind of take pride in the craftsmanship or the workmanship of your code, and then and how it appears. And then along with style, you've got your tests and documentation. So another thing to help the reviewer understand why you did what you did is to put in some good documentation and some tests, so they know tests are a great way to describe what your function's supposed to do and then what the correct output looks like. And it can be a really good documentation tool in the background for developers. And of course, the quality of your code is really important. And so those tests help you not get embarrassed when you push it up and it breaks some website or some product that you're developing with the team. So yeah, that's a typical day for a junior software developer in the agile world. Back when I was, it's called the agile process for software development.
Awesome, thank you. All right, Peter.
Yeah, so I guess I'll start with, I'm a part of an application team. So Black Knight has like a bunch of in-house applications that we sell along with our proprietary data. So I'm part of a team that the application is called the Rapid Analytics Platform, or RAP for short. It's basically like a browser-based Jupyter notebook on steroids that connects to all of our proprietary data sets. So we sell it to financial institutions, people that do data analysis, ML people, and they can write models, they can do queries on the notebook. So they can write notebooks to run queries and build models, and it directly ties into our proprietary real estate data that we kind of sell in like an all-in-one package. And my role, the team's kind of split into two different mini teams. We have like the front end and back end team. So I'm part of the back end team, specifically focused on data and production. So I'm like one of two people on our team of 20 that has access to our production environment, because we have something called separation of duty in play, where if you have access to one thing, then you can't have access to other stuff. But so my typical day in that role is 3 of the 5 days we have meetings. Wednesdays and Fridays we don't have meetings, those are my favorite days, because I can actually get stuff done. Granted, no one doesn't bother me. But every other day we start with, like Hobson was mentioning, we have stand up. So I go to stand up. It's like a 15-minute call, kind of tell everyone what I did yesterday, what I'm planning on working on today, and if there's any blockers. And we kind of go around the room. And then first couple hours of my days for meeting days is just sitting in meetings that range from like product backlog refinement. So those are like product team looking at our whole backlog of work items and kind of prioritizing what needs to get injected into our sprint. So speaking on what Hobson said again, we do run like an agile workflow where we have sprints, and we also we have a sprint planning and Kanban board. So we kind of have like a hybrid of the both for the two teams. But generally work items you get assigned and you kind of have like a 2-week window to work on them and finish them up, unless it's a longer going project. And when I'm not in meetings, you know, or when I am in meetings is usually when I'm checking emails and responding to messages, kind of trying to kill two birds with one stone. When I'm not in meetings, though, is when I get to kind of work on my individual contribution type of things. I have been kind of pigeonholed into like a security role, which I had no idea coming into this company that I was gonna get put into this role, but it's kind of like a sysadmin security role where I'm responsible for scanning like all of our code, and we have like vulnerability scanning that we have set up that's run. So that's like kind of a collaboration between our team, and then we have like a threat vulnerability management team. Obviously, have a ton of like standards and procedures and kind of bunch of red tape because all of our clients are financial institutions. So all of our security vulnerabilities have to be like really up to date. We have usually like a 30-day turnaround window if we have a vulnerability on our application. So when things like that happen, it's like everyone on the team needs to drop what they're doing and go and resolve the security issue because we might lose a client if we don't. So I'm responsible for kind of doing all of that and then writing out the work items and getting those assigned to the proper people on the team. And then my individual contribution stuff, I'm focused a lot on like data ingestion. So our platform is kind of the central hub for the whole company's data ingestion, and we have a ton of data. I think we have like almost 99% of real estate tax records going back like to the 1980s for the US. So we have a lot of historical data, and we are in a kind of a constant state of change with, you know, developing new and better ways to ingest and to organize that data. So I work with tools like Apache Spark, NiFi, Hive, do a lot of stuff in SQL, and a lot of all of our services are on AWS. So very familiar with all the AWS suites of services that they have. But yeah, it's busy, and like everyone else said, not, you know, every day is different. It's kind of, I have my set stuff that I know I'm going to be working on, but that can change. Like my manager can call me and be like, hey, you need to get on this call. A client is having an issue with the notebook, and I'll get thrown into a customer call and have to debug up, you know, something in production. And then other days it's pretty just like keeps myself, no one messages me, and I get to work on the stuff that I actually want to work on. But it's a lot of like putting out fires here and there, you know, and battling with the tyranny of now. Like everything's the most important thing.
Oh, I understand that battle. Awesome. Thank you guys so much. It's amazing how much overlap there is in all of your different fields. I think when I first saw all of the panelists that we had, I was like, oh, these are going to be all so different. But the field itself seems to be a lot of overlapping kind of things happening in parallel. So I think we hit a lot of those points with all of your various areas that you work with. Okay, so we're running up against the clock and we have 2 more questions. So I'm gonna smash them together. They don't really belong together, but I'm gonna smash them and ask you to just be brief. So last but not least, do you feel accepted in your profession amongst your colleagues? And then do you have any last advice for someone just starting off with their degree? And I'm going to start with you, Pricilla, because you are the one panelist who is a woman out of our 6 guests. I tried to balance, I swear I did, but unfortunately there's a little imbalance left in this field. So yeah, if you could start it off.
Okay, so as far as feeling accepted within my field, everyone that I work with is great. So far, I have a great team to work with. I am the only woman on the team, but they don't treat me any different than anyone else. We're all pretty much very family, kind of tight knit. I mean, I've worked with some of these people for over a decade, and so we are. I felt pretty accepted. Outside of the workplace, sometimes you will run into some people who will kind of challenge you and try to test your knowledge on what you know. And you do run into that, unfortunately, as a woman today. But for the most part, I really have not let it get to me or kind of deter me from, saying that I am an engineer. Because, I've gone in to come and help some people, and they're like, I thought you were going to send an engineer. And you're like, sorry, this is what you get. But for the most part, I'd had a really pretty good time with trying to get through that. Because you do have to still prove yourself, no matter where you end up going. It I would say that you would want to network and really, really start to cherish and cultivate some kind of relationship with your colleagues, with people outside. I actually ended up getting the internship because of an instructor at my school. He heard through another student that he was looking for more interns to work with. So he was like, oh, well, I have a perfect student for you in mind. And he came and just scooped me out of my class that I was in the middle of. And he was like, I need you to come with me. I have a job for you. I'm like, oh, you just have to really get yourself into a point where, as us, in the tech field, a lot of us, including myself, I'm an introvert. I don't like to, go venture out too much outside. I keep to myself quite a bit, but you have to kind of get over that hump and really start to like make friends within the industry. In San Diego, the tech industry is very small. Everybody knows each other. So your reputation will be talked about if you have a good one. And so just, it's about who you know sometimes. Because I was a help desk intern to start with, and we got a new CSO, and we never had a CSO before. We only had one security guy for the longest time. And now once they hired him, I was like, you know what, let me just introduce myself to him. And that's how he was just like, okay, well, you already had the balls to come to me. That's what he said, like literally said that to me. And I was like, okay, cool. He's like, well, you want a job? I'm like, yes, I would like a job, please. Thank you. But yeah, just really cultivate some strong relationships with people in the field once you start getting your feet wet. That would be the biggest advice. Because I had gone in career change, no certs, working on a degree, and you just really have to put yourself out there.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Peter?
Yeah, so first part of that question, I would say generally, like, I feel definitely very well accepted in my job and my role, especially more this company than the company I first started when I graduated. That was a startup, and there was definitely a bit of unhealthy competition there. And they tried to kind of pit the engineers against each other. I worked with a lot of my fellow Cal State graduates, so we kind of were able to see the other side of that and share information that I feel like normally wouldn't be shared if you didn't know your colleagues or peers. And luckily, a lot of us were able to leave when we kind of realized that it was kind of a toxic workplace. Where I am now is obviously a lot more just normal kind of corporate. And it's a big company, we're like several thousand and we're global. But my team is small, and I feel like we're all remote, but I have a great manager who's like very nonchalant with me, and he kind of understands that like working remote, we all have personal life, and he's like, as long as you get your stuff done, and you don't need to be like in front of the computer 8 hours a day. And I would say, the competition I face now on a daily basis is like very healthy and friendly. If I don't understand something, if I ask one of my peers or manager, they might not tell me right away. They might try and like nudge me to the solution before they give me the answer, which I appreciate, as someone that's like still learning. And I feel like as an engineer, we can say that, we're always kind of in a state of learning. So I appreciate not being given the answer right away and kind of being like nudged to use a little critical thinking sometimes. And, sometimes I forget because I'm like, I need to get this done and figure it out. But there is like a lot of incentive within my team too, just to kind of do personal projects and kind of do things on the side. So they cultivate that pretty nicely as well. Advice for people that are still in school, I would say, like what Pricilla was saying, like networking is super important. Talk to your professors, go to office hours, learn about the stuff that they have done, learn from their mistakes. they're people too, and they've been in the career longer than you have as a student. So talk to them, use them as your resources. That's like what they're there for. Also, as a student, like I was kind of focused on one area of computer science when I was in school, and I was like, oh, like I'm not super into like web or anything. Like I don't think I'm going to work in web. And then getting into my career, it's like, well, everything kind of is related to web, even if you like don't want to. Like I would say spend more time learning networking, because that will always come up in interviews. Like if you can answer networking questions, TLS, SSL, like all of that stuff will really help you out if you just have an understanding of like when I go to a website and click enter, like what is happening. Like if you can describe, the whole process of like visiting a website and the user interaction and what's happening like down to the hardware level, I think you're pretty set. And a lot of that learning I had to do kind of after the fact and preparing myself for interview. I would say like, definitely utilize like a lot of online resources, because there's just so much more than you'll get exposed to than just school, and all of that stuff's free. There's a lot of interviewing, practice and prep and stuff. Definitely don't shy away from it. And most importantly, like don't be afraid to write code. I know a big part of when I was in school was like the fear of starting, and like I would kind of procrastinate on projects and not really know where to start. And I'm still kind of like that in my job, but the second you start writing code, it's like you have a starting point and then you can go back from there and, break the problem into smaller problems. Eventually you'll figure it out. And I would say like, I'm not a smart person. I'm just like, I try hard, and it's, I think anyone can do the jobs that we do. It's just like, you have to want to do it, and I feel like for myself, I put in the extra time to kind of learn, and where it's not necessarily there out the get-go, I can pick it up because I'm pretty tenacious. But
Peter, I'm going to cut you off right there and say that tenacity is intelligence.
oh well,
So
thank you.
let's lock down our self-talk. Yeah, no, you kill it. All of you guys work really hard, and there's no person that is good at things inherently, right? We all have to work towards what we want to build. So anything else you wanted to say? Sorry, I had to cut you off because I heard the sound.
No, that's it. I'm just kidding. I appreciate it.
Awesome. Thank you. All right, Hobson.
So as far as being accepted, everybody's different in some way, and I've been working at startups like Phil, Peter, and found I was always about 10 years older than everybody else on the team, and so I was often the first to be let go every time that there was downsizing. Startups, only 10% of them ever are sustainable for more than a couple of years, and so it's been a long period of being having to pull myself up by my bootstraps, and it's really devastating when you get fired. And just be ready for it. It's going to happen, and you're going to feel like it's something you did or your fault, or you can have imposter syndrome, it's called. But you're not an imposter. You're just like everybody else. You're human, and there's limited resources at these companies. And one of the great things that I found that helped me was as I became more and more of a superhero from my colleagues or my fellow students, I find that helped me a lot to build my confidence back up, and to and of course ingratiate me to the rest of the team, so I'm less likely to get fired the next time. And it's a great way to, so there's going to be somebody newer than you, that somebody's going to be coming into the team, not going to have the experience that you have at some particular thing. There's always someone you can help, and if you can be somebody's superhero, it can really help you build up your own self-confidence. And one of the great places to do that is on open source projects. So if you're looking for a job straight out of school, it's a great place to learn from others. It can be really disheartening sending out all those resumes and going to all these interviews, getting all this rejection. Rejection is one of the things you're going to have to deal with first and throughout your career, and it's really difficult. But by doing something productive and other people thanking you for it, and realizing that, hey, this is being used on this, professional project. And then working for those companies, once they see how, helpful a developer you are, then that can also be a segue into working for them one day. And those companies tend to be much less competitive, much more supportive, much more healthy environments to learn from, and you get to see a lot of really good code in the open source projects. So that's my pitch for open source.
I love that. I love that. I think that that's true of a lot of people, especially in between slumps in tech, is working on a personal portfolio or working on open source projects can be really great opportunities. So yeah, thank you so much for that, Hobson. Sebastian, you want to close us
Sure.
out?
Yeah, as far as like my colleagues in the workplace, I would say absolutely. And I think that's one of the things that really helps you like your job too, is like your team. And so, like I mentioned, I didn't actually start out as a project engineer, but because I had a lot of, skills that I could offer, I was actually kind of poached onto the team. So that was like super empowering. And something like Hobson mentioned, kind of imposter syndrome, for sure. Like at first, I was super nervous to start this job. It was like the amount of responsibility I was going to have, and the level of accountability I was going to be asked for is just immense compared to my old position. So it was very daunting moving to this, but I think now that I've done it for a year, I would say, and just having the feedback from like good management and my team, I think it's been extremely important and making me feel comfortable, like I know what I'm doing. Um, and I would say just advice is like for students is like never stop learning, I guess. Like you really like learn a lot in school and stuff, but that's like nothing compared to how much like in my job I've learned more in working in my field than I ever did in school. Um, and I would say like choose good electives that are applicable to something in that you can do. Like if you're in a computer science degree, I would say choose like a Linux elective or learn something like that is really going to carry over because it's going to help you so much. And I would say like tool wise, I was kind of in that when I first graduated, I didn't get a job till about 5, 6 months later. And like many CS students, I was like on Reddit, just reading, what do I need to do? What do I need to study? And I would say a lot of the things that people recommend on Reddit, I would stay away from. Like don't sit on leak code for weeks on end and memorize stuff. Like practice the fundamentals and like learn applicable things. And but if you do need to learn how to like do algorithms and code, one thing I would recommend was actually Algo Expert. As like it's a paid subscription thing similar to LeetCode. But you get really high level overviews of the questions that you're asked and to solve. And there's different packages. So if you want to learn web development, you can look for like $100 a year. There's like super in-depth courses from like the same, I don't want to say the same stuff you'll get at a boot camp, but like essentially like, you won't get a certification, but you can learn all that stuff and you can, if funding is a problem for you or whatever. So I'd say just like utilize all the stuff and all the free resources out there. YouTube got me through college, like looking up like algorithms, all the people like in India and all these other places that just explained it so much better than like anyone else. And so, yeah, just utilize resources, keep learning, and stay interested. But yeah, thanks.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Sebastian and Joshua. If you can take us home.
Yeah, I'll try to be as quick as possible. On the question on do I feel accepted, I think I've been fortunate to work at organizations where I've been very accepted, even though I'm in a relatively new role. We're not as developed as or as well known as being a software engineer or product manager, things of that nature. And I think that really has to do with culture. This like flows into the like advice that I have. I think making sure that you understand the culture of the organization and what organizations you're going into, I think is really helpful. On the side of learning, I know Peter mentioned this a little, and Sebastian, I think the one thing that ties all of us together, whether we're, computer science majors or adjacent to tech or got there through many other ways, English or nursing, is that you do need to continuously learn, right? And technology is definitely a field where you always have to be learning, right? I fully expect to be in a role by the time I'm, old and gray, hopefully looking at retirement, I'm probably in a role at a company that currently does not exist with the title that does not even exist right now, right? And especially for people who are in school right now, who knows, you might be starting off in a job that like just as of right now does not exist. And I think that mindset of really just like, hey, I need to learn and learn as much as I can, as best as I can, and have that really humble mentality takes you really long, and really helps build your soft skills as well to help you network and become, you know, successful in whatever you are interested in or passionate about.
Wonderful. Thank you all so much. This was a phenomenal panel, and I really appreciate you coming into overtime with us. But yeah, thank you all so much for your time and your expertise. And I will let you go. And again, big thank you.
Well,
Thank
thanks
you.
for having us.
Putting this
Bye.
together.
Thank you.
It's a fun.